Everybody remembers that Lot's wife looked back. Almost nobody asks why. And that is where the simple version of the story starts to crack. Usually the whole thing gets told very quickly. There is Sodom. There is danger. Lot and his family are told to leave. They run. They are warned not to look back. Lot's wife looks back. And suddenly she becomes the most memorable salt-related incident in the entire Bible. Very efficient storytelling, but maybe a little too efficient. Because the point is not only that she turned her head, the harder question is what that movement revealed. Lot's wife was leaving Sodom physically. Her feet were moving away from it. The city was getting farther behind her. But had she really left it behind, Sodom was not just a city on a map. It was home, routine, memory, identity, familiarity. It was the place where ordinary life had happened long before this very unordinary morning. There were possessions behind her, rooms she knew, streets she recognized, people she had seen. A life that, for better or worse, had become normal. And human beings are strangely good at getting attached to what is familiar, even when familiar is not the same thing as good. Apparently, this place is about to be destroyed does not instantly erase years of attachment. Very inconvenient. The command, however, was painfully clear. Escape. Do not stop. Do not look back. Keep moving. No luggage. No goodbye tour. No, we'll come back for the furniture. Just run. And that is where the order becomes heavier than it first sounds. Leaving a place can happen in minutes. Accepting that an entire life is over can take much longer. She was not simply walking away from buildings. She was walking away from the world she knew. No careful ending, no final conversation, no time to organize what came next. And there was another uncomfortable detail. Nobody was asking whether she felt ready. The rescue did not wait for emotional closure. The warning came, the door opened, and the family had to move. Fast. Survival was moving at one speed, attachment was moving at another. The future was somewhere ahead. Everything familiar was behind. So maybe the most important question is not what she eventually saw when she looked back. Maybe it is what was already pulling her attention backward before she ever turned. It is like finally driving away from a place you know you need to leave, then checking the rearview mirror again, as if some part of you still expects to belong there. The mirror is not the problem. What keeps making you check it might be. Lot's wife had not looked back yet. Not once. But the crack may already have been there. Her body was moving forward. Her history was behind her. And somewhere between those two directions, the past still had a grip. The famous look had not happened yet. The conflict had. Lot's wife did not become attached to the past when she looked back. If there was a crack, it had started before her head ever turned. Because before the look, there was already loss. A home abandoned. A routine interrupted. Possessions left behind. A future suddenly erased. And absolutely no time to process any of it. The family had been pushed out of Sodom with one basic instruction: keep moving. Which sounds wonderfully simple, until keep moving means leaving almost everything you recognize behind in a matter of minutes. Apparently, abandoning your entire life without internal conflict is very easy. Of course. The strange part was that rescue and loss were happening at the same time. They were escaping destruction, but they were also watching the life they knew disappear behind them. Those two things can exist together. Something can be necessary to leave and still be difficult to lose, and that makes the warning not to look back much heavier. It was not only about where their eyes were pointed, it meant accepting something final, that life was over. No return trip, no second chance to collect what remained. No, we forgot something. No quick stop for the furniture, nothing. The door was closing, and they were supposed to keep walking while it did. That is why simple curiosity may not explain everything that happened next. Maybe Lot's wife did not look back because she wanted information. Maybe the harder possibility is that something behind her still felt like home. Curiosity asks, what is happening back there? Attachment asks, what am I losing? Those are not the same question. One wants to see, the other does not want to release. Her feet kept carrying her forward, but every step made the separation more permanent. And that is where leaving becomes uncomfortable. At first you are simply moving, Then you realize you cannot go back. Then the mind starts negotiating. Maybe it was not all bad. Maybe something could still be saved. Maybe one look would not matter. Because the past does not always pull by demanding that someone return. Sometimes it only asks for one more glance. It is like finding the emergency exit, stepping through it, and then discovering that part of you still wants to hold the door open behind you. But an escape stops being an escape if you keep treating the place behind you like an option. She had already left Sodom. The harder question was whether she had accepted that Sodom was gone. That was the real fracture. Not a neck turning. Not yet. A heart possibly still negotiating with something that had already been taken off the table. Ahead was survival. Behind was the life she knew, and with every step the distance between them grew. The decision became more final, the old life became less reachable, and then the past had one last chance to pull. This time, she answered, and then she looked back. That was it. No speech, no argument, no dramatic announcement, just one movement. Small enough to take a second, large enough to define how people would remember her for thousands of years. Lot's wife turned toward Sodom. And suddenly everything that had been building beneath the escape became visible. The instruction had been simple. Keep moving. Do not look back. She had already made it out. Her feet were pointed toward survival. The city was behind her. Then her head turned. And that is what makes the scene so powerful. A huge inner conflict can sometimes appear through a very small action. People usually expect important decisions to look important. They imagine speeches, arguments, long pauses. Maybe someone staring dramatically into the distance while orchestral music does most of the work. But sometimes the whole thing is just a glance, 1 second, one direction, one choice. And sometimes one small choice explains more than a whole speech ever could. That does not mean the look created whatever attachment may have existed. It may simply have exposed it. The look was not necessarily the beginning of the struggle. It was the moment the struggle became visible. It is like closing a door you know needs to stay closed, walking away from it, then reaching back for the handle. The hand did not create the hesitation. It revealed it. And Lot's wife had reached that kind of moment. The command was forward. Her attention went backward. For 1 second, those two directions collided. Her body had escaped Sodom. Her gaze returned to it. Apparently, the feet had received the message before the rest of her did. And there is something uncomfortable about how little action the story needs. She does not run back into the city. She does not demand to return home. She does not stop everyone and announce that leaving was a terrible idea. She looks. That is all the text gives. And somehow that is enough. Because a person can leave something physically and still reveal in one tiny movement that part of them has not fully let go. The road can point forward. Attention can still point back. And for the first time, the tension between escape and attachment was no longer hidden. It had direction. Behind her, toward Sodom. Then the story moves with brutal speed. No warning speech, no second attempt, no time for anyone to say, maybe don't do that. One look, one consequence. A moment that lasted seconds became the image attached to her name forever. And now the command that had sounded almost too simple suddenly made terrifying sense. Don't look. And now the command becomes the center of the story. Don't look. That was it. Not a long list, not a complicated ritual, not a mysterious code hidden somewhere in the fine print. Just one direction. Keep moving. Do not turn around. Leave Sodom behind. Simple enough to remember. Apparently much harder to do. By this point, the command was not complicated at all. The family had been pulled out of the city. Safety was ahead. Sodom was behind. There was no secret third option, no scenic stop. No just one last look. No quick return because someone forgot something important. Forward meant forward. And that is why Lot's wife turning back matters so much. The famous look is not the beginning of the story. It is the moment everything becomes visible. She had already escaped. She had already heard the warning. She had already started moving in the right direction. At this point, she had one job: keep going. Somehow, even that came with a complication. She turned. Safety was ahead. Sodom was behind, and her eyes chose behind. The text does not explain every thought in her head. There is no diary, no speech, no detailed explanation of what she felt in that moment. There is only the action. She looked back, and sometimes one action is enough. It is like escaping a collapsing building, reaching the street, and then turning toward the doorway, as if the room behind you still deserves one more second of your attention. The exit has already happened. The danger is behind. But the attention goes back anyway. That is what makes the command feel heavier now. Don't look. Not because the past suddenly disappears, not because memory itself is the problem, but because in this moment, looking back meant breaking the direction she had been given. The road was forward, she turned backward. That is the whole scene, and the irony is brutal. She had already done the hardest visible part. She left Sodom, she made it outside, she was on the road. Then the story turned on something as small as a glance. No return to the city, no dramatic rebellion, no long argument with anyone, just one look. And that look became the moment everyone remembered. The scene is famous because it is so simple. A command, an escape, a glance, a consequence. Nothing extra, nothing hidden. She got out of Sodom. The harder question is whether she had truly left Sodom behind. That is why the famous scene is not really about how far she had walked. It is about direction. Her feet had gone forward, her eyes went back, and in 1 second the whole tension of the story became visible. Don't look. By now the command no longer sounds small, it sounds like the whole story. Lot's wife looked back, and according to Genesis she became a pillar of salt. That quickly, no second warning, no long explanation, no chance to turn back around and pretend nothing happened. One look, one consequence. And suddenly, the woman who had almost escaped Sodom became one of the most unforgettable images in the entire story. That is the payoff people remember. But the harder part is understanding what the scene may be showing. The text never tells exactly what was happening inside her. There is no speech explaining her motives, no diary, no hidden paragraph telling everyone whether she felt fear, grief, curiosity, attachment, or all of them at once. So the story should not be made more certain than the Bible makes it. But the look still raises a question. She had already been given a way out. Why turn toward what had been left behind? Maybe that is why the story stays uncomfortable. Because leaving something is not always the same as releasing it. Distance is not the same thing as letting go. Someone can walk miles away from an old life and still use that old life to decide what everything ahead should feel like. It is like walking toward a new future while using the past as a compass. That usually causes navigation problems. Lot's wife had reached the point where there was no normal return. Sodom was not simply another city she could visit later. That chapter was ending violently and permanently, and the command had been clear from the beginning. Go. Keep going. Do not look back. She made it through almost the entire visible part of the escape. Then one small movement became the entire story. That is the strange power of this scene. She is not remembered for a speech. She is not remembered for a battle. She is not even remembered for running out of Sodom. She is remembered for one glance, a glance that lasted seconds, a consequence that lasted in memory for thousands of years. And maybe that is why the story should not be reduced to never look backward. That is too simple. People remember the past. They miss things. They grieve endings. They think about places they once called home. The deeper tension is about what happens when a road has clearly closed behind someone, but part of their attention still treats it like an option. There are moments when moving forward means accepting that a certain door really did close. No negotiation, no secret return route, no final inspection. Closed. Lot's wife received an exit. She took it. Then, at the final moment, she looked toward the life she had been told to leave. And the escape ended there. She was almost out of the story. Then she looked back and became its warning. Which biblical story should be simplified next? Jonah, Samson, or Balaam?